species. Out here on these terraces, if we had done nothing, I think the example of walking through that area says it all. I mean, there'd be no vegetation. There's like, I think in our data, bare ground is still dominant. You know, there's still mostly bare ground. It's close to 70%. The vegetation that has come in naturally has been mostly the weedy grasses that aren't native to the United States. And the other things that have come into some of those areas where we've done nothing are plants that have moved into those sites. So I think even in our control, it'd be that much less vegetation if we had done nothing in other areas. So there'd be a big difference out here on the terraces.
And maybe you could sort of explain and showing us, show us these plots where now
right.
Yeah.
was placed.
Mm-hmm. That's what right when yeah.
Let's okay. When you
So I'm standing in a spot that kind of illustrates where we did nothing. So if you look out this direction, you can see there's the occasional plant. This little area had some moisture, so there's plants there, but in general, there's almost no vegetation. Whereas where we seeded and planted, to my right, there's lots of vegetation. There's not much bare ground. There's still some because it's a difficult surface, even for our plants. But seeding was key to getting vegetation out here. Seeding riverbank lupin, as well as there's a few other species that have actually done really well for us, and that has supported the plants, the woody species that we've put out there, the western white pines, the grand firs, the Douglas firs, all the native trees that we're trying to get established out on the surface have really benefited from seeding, and that's been the big difference out on these sites.
Maybe nature will do the most part of the job, and you have to be a kind of humble.
Oh yeah.
When you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah. So out here, I mean, this is the end. So we're done. Veg is done, and it's all up to nature now. And you know, most of what happened out here was nature. It was not us. All we can do is try to introduce species that would take a long time to get out here, and hope that they can reproduce themselves and sustain themselves out here without our help. And that's what's happening. It's already been happening. I mean, we haven't planted for two years out on these, or 3 years now on these surfaces, and they're doing great because the riverbank lupin has reproduced on its own. We've seen some of the species that expand underground expand. Nature's in charge now, not us. Well, indeed. Fine, that's fine. All we did out here, excuse me. So all we did out here was accelerate the process. You know, we live in a pretty wet part of the country, except for the summers. Eventually, this site would have taken care of itself. Eventually. It just would have taken a very long time, and some of the species that we introduced might not have ever gotten here. So what we did was just introduce species that might not have showed up on their own, that did well, and that accelerated the vegetation cover out here. That's all we did. And we can't, I never thought we could do anything better. You know, we knew that all we could do is try to speed the process up. And that's all we did. Mother Nature's in charge, and we'll take it from here. And, you know, again, it's going to be a long time on these surfaces, even with what we've done, because there's just not a lot of resources for plants that are available. And that's going to take a long time to change.
Preclude weeds.
That'd be a guess. It will, what's that?
Preclude weeds. That's the other thing we did.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't really know how long it'll take. We have some landforms that were formed by glacial Lake Elwha 15,000 years ago, and they're like this. They're old delta landforms that are still a novel plant community that are very different than the surrounding forest. So we expect this to stay very unique and different from the surrounding forests. How long will that take? It's hard to say. The cottonwood is, you know, half the height on these surfaces as it is on those. So, you know, at least double the amount of time that these forests will take to develop. A couple hundred years, maybe. That'd be my guess. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That Janice Thomas.
Yep. See this guy?
Lisa Hill. Isn't that great?
I know.
Did you plant that or come in?
That came in.
That came in?
Yeah, that's natural. This is a good spot for them. They're right there. I've found a few in this location. Look at those little duggies. Oh, here's it. That's a good example of seeded, unseeded.
Yes. Yeah. Ah, the cover there is great.
I know, isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
That was a tough spot too. Like, I don't think we have much in terms of what we planted alive in there anymore. It's just the lupin.
Mr. Trail.
Huh? Oh, another trail.
Yeah, another trail.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Does he want to just keep come back? Is that what he's asking?
I like this view really well, though.
You mean looking that way?
Huh?
Looking that way?
I like this view because you're going into the Olympics.
Yeah.
You're beginning a trip instead of exiting.
Yep.
A pretty good trip for you. And
What
me,
is?
this whole experience.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow, geez.
Oh,
What a phenomenal
dream
thing.
come true. That's why I don't really walk away with. I don't have any regrets. I mean,
No.
I can't even say I want to stay at the park other than financial reasons. I mean, you know.
No, but you got to do this.
I know.
Nobody gets to do this.
Nope.
By what we see here,
Sure.
would be perfect for us.
Okay.
So this terrace right below us, this where you see a lot of wood, we actually deposited that wood there. Okay, so we had a heavy lift helicopter come, pluck the wood off the valley wall where it had deposited over 8 years, and we placed it with the idea that it would help vegetation. And this side we seeded, and if you follow that wood, and you can see it's still deposited, and then there's no vegetation. Well, that section we left unseeded. That's our control. And you can see that there's really not much growing there. So that's a nice contrast to where we did something, you know, where we seeded and didn't seed.
And what about the green line? Just
Yeah, that
behind?
green line.
Please,
That's
just my
hold
voice,
on.
because
Yeah,
of my voice.
Yep.
So that green line of vegetation right at the base of this next terrace is pretty common. Essentially, there's moisture kind of dropping through these terraces from the valley wall, and it's allowing willow and cottonwood to establish. They probably got started when the river was there, so they're, you know, that was probably 2013, so they're 5 years old, and they've persisted and gotten a lot bigger than some of the ones that you see sort of stranded out in the middle because there's some moisture that they can access at the base of that terrace. So that's what that is. We did plant on that next terrace, mixed in there, so we've added diversity and species richness, but we did not seed down there, which is why you can kind of see a lot of bare ground. You don't see those, you know, lupin patches that you see on this next terrace up.
What about the decomposition, etc.?
Yeah. So the point of, we had a lot of logs, okay, so what you don't see now anymore because of the vegetation is there is